And welcome back. Well, I thought we'd spend this session exploring the grid and snap options and tools. Now, I know we've not used them in the modelling of the Messerschmitt 109E, which I must confess I find quite surprising. Okay, so let's go up to tools, and what we're looking for is grid and snaps. Grid and snap settings, there they are. Okay, well at the moment we're in snaps and we're on standard. Now there are some other options there, but we're basically concentrating on the standard settings. Here we can see that we have a number of options available to us. Grid points, grid lines. We actually select these and activate them by left clicking the mouse and putting a checkbox there. And now all we need to do is toggle our snap tool on, and we do that by pressing S on the keyboard and then deciding what piece of geometry we'd like to create. We'll start with a box. Now you can see that our cursor is snapping to the points on the grid. Okay, let's select this one here, left click with our mouse, let's drag it out, and you'll notice that as we do so it is snapping to points on the grid. Left click on that one, drag it up, left click to end the action. Okay, now this will only work on the grid. It doesn't work on our geometry. Even though it's looking as though it is working on the geometry, if we go Alt X, you'll see that it's actually selecting the points on the grid and not on our geometry. And if we deselect grid points and select grid lines, we now see that the snap tool is actually going to the lines on our grid. So we have box selected. We could start there, left click and create a box. I'm letting go of the left mouse key, let's pull it up, left click to end the action. Okay, now again it isn't selecting, the cursor isn't snapping to anything on the geometry here or here, just on the grid. Right, let's deselect grid lines. I don't need this piece of geometry here, so we'll press delete. Now let's have a look at pivot. Okay, that's pivot selected. When we now go into our viewport, we can see that this piece of geometry is highlighted with a yellow band all the way around, and we have this symbol in the middle. Well, that is our pivot point. So if we wanted to create another piece of geometry now, it's saying, well, there's the pivot point, now create. So if I left click with my mouse, drag the geometry out, we have to come outside of it. If we try creating it inside, it doesn't like it. So we come outside the box, let's say to about there, let go of the mouse key and pull it up. Okay, so we've now created our piece of geometry from the pivot point of this piece of geometry. And again, as I don't really need that piece of geometry there, I'm just going to delete it. Okay, let's just have a look at this, move in a little bit. Now we have vertices, so let me deselect the pivot there and select vertices there. Now as you can see here on the geometry, it's actually snapping to the vertices on this box. So if I wish to create another box, it's saying okay, select your vertices and start creating from there. Let's change that to a sphere. I'm on that vertices there, left click, and this is where it does go a little bit crackers, but what I'm going to do is let go of the left mouse key, then pop over here and reduce the radius. And as you can see there, if we just pivot around into there, you can see it's actually created the sphere from the vertices there. Okay, once again, as I don't need the sphere, I'm gonna delete it. Let's just take this back home. So what else is available to us? Well, we've seen vertex. What about edge segment? Right, what I'd like to do here is just move out of the create, select the box, go Alt X, and let's say we'll go back to creating a sphere. Can we move in a little bit? We can. Okay, so we've got edge segment. Basically it's the same as grid lines, but for our geometry. So here we can see that with these moving down, we can actually select an edge or a segment. And we could of course create our sphere from any point along that edge there. Let's say we want to create one there. Now I know it's going to go crackers, so just do that and then bring this down. So what that's done is we've created a sphere along that edge there. Let's delete that. Uncheck edge. What about face? Well, the face now, it's turned it into triangles, but it's saying yeah, you can create that sphere anywhere along that face there. Left click, there we go, created. Let's delete that one, we don't need it. Deselect face. Endpoint. I always think endpoint is, well, basically the same as vertex, but here is endpoint and it's telling us there's an endpoint there. So endpoint there, you see. I could start creating our sphere from that point. See, so it's taking it to that endpoint there. Let's delete that. What else? Midpoint. Now midpoint, as the name suggests, if we select this edge here, that one there, it's taking it to the middle of the midpoint. So we could create our sphere from there. Let's reduce that down again. And let's delete once more. So center face, you can create your geometry from there. Did that not do it? There we go. Let's reduce that down. So it took it from the center of that section of the face, it split it into two halves. And that's that. Okay, let's delete that. And we're going to toggle the snap tool off, so I'm going to press S. Well, the screen froze again, but we have returned. Yes, when it comes to the snaps, I generally use it more for when I'm creating planes, splines, and also when I'm rigging. So we will be using it quite a bit in future tutorials. Okay, there is something else as well that I'd like to acquaint you with. Let's go to our helpers and let's zoom out a little bit. Now in helpers we have something called points. Now they're not really pieces of geometry, they are just helpers, but what we can do is create these points anywhere we like. And I've just set 3 up here at the moment. What I want to do is set pivot there, then press S to activate our tool, into splines, I'm going to create a line. We've got S, there it is. Now you'll notice that when we come close to one of these pointers, we get this box around it, and that's saying, alright, here's a point, that's the pivot section there, do you want to select that? Well, I've got my line here, so I'm going to say OK, take that point there. Come over here, we've got another point saying there's the pivot, select it, go yep, and this one down here, and then we can close the line, spline, there. Close it, yes. Now it saved me actually messing around in 3D space trying to get these positioned, this spline positioned. So it's always a good idea to use these pointers whenever you need them, and then you can snap to these. Okay, right, well that's snaps and grids. Have a play around with them, try and become familiar with them, and enjoy. Right, I'm going to bring this session to a close now, so I'll catch you later.